It just upsets me, really, because, it's like if I didn't need the help, I wouldn't be coming here. The person they really hurting most is, my daughter. Even though she doesn't show it, I know that makes her feel kind of sad.
That was Natika Alexander in his own words. He's one of the many New York City fathers struggling to find housing for his family. The number of homeless public school students in Manhattan is rising. State data shows that 1 in 10 students do not have a place to call home. I-24 News correspondent Marques White caught up with some of these young people and has their story in this evening's Spotlight.
Victor Aponte is a straight-A student, but he hasn't always had a home. Recently, he's had to bounce back and forth between homeless shelters while trying to juggle 7th grade.
I don't really like it, but it's whatever. I'm not really stressed about it.
When we first met Victor in October, he traveled 1 hour and 30 minutes to get from a homeless shelter in Queens to a school in the Bronx. In December, after 2 months of struggles, he and his dad finally found a shelter closer to his school. But Victor wasn't alone, trying to get classes in an entirely different borough miles away from home. That's because if a family is fortunate enough to get a spot at a homeless shelter in the city, that shelter may not be near their school.
It's just mind-boggling to me.
Natika Alexander and his daughter Zakiya Lee dealt with the same battle.
And how does it make you feel when you go to school?
Happy, but when I come back to school and go to this place, it's made me sad.
Alexander travels more than 45 minutes to get his daughter from this homeless shelter in the Bronx to her school. Alexander also says he has to pull his daughter from classes to apply for changes to housing.
When I miss school, it's make me sad because I'm missing my education.
James Macklin is an advocate for the homeless.
It breaks my heart. It should break any decent human being's heart to hear about a child being homeless.
Macklin is also the director of outreach at the Bowery Mission, a shelter that's not run by the city. He let us see the inside of what the mission looks like, where people sleep, shower, and eat. According to The Economist, there were 63,000 people living in homeless shelters in New York City in 2017. New York City Councilman Rafael Espinal says the affordable housing crisis is forcing people from their homes, making it impossible to find places to live.
We have to continue finding ways where we continue incentivizing landlords to keep families in their homes, and also developers to continue building the maximum amount of affordable housing they can. That's the only way we're going to get these children out of our shelters.
Do you think it's more difficult to study for students who stay in shelters? What do you see in your experience?
Yes, I believe it's more difficult to study for them to study because, always in the back of their head is the question of where am I going to lay down? Where am I going to go to sleep?
Meanwhile, families like Natika Alexander hope to find a permanent place to call home much closer to school. As for Aponte, he says he's glad it doesn't take him 1.5 hours to get to school.
Yeah, it's no fun, but it's a lot better.
A lot better. Marques White joins us now in studio. Marques, what stood out in putting this piece together and talking to these students?
Really just how resilient they are. So we heard from the young girl, Zakiya Lee, and her father basically believing that she would be sad returning to a homeless shelter at night, but really she seems like she's just fine. And then also Victor Aponte, who is a student who's been bouncing back and forth between homeless shelter to homeless shelter, who's doing very well in school.
What are some of the other types of issues that these students are dealing with?
So some data says that they're chronically absent. You can imagine if you're a student dealing with these issues that you would have some issues sometimes getting to school. In addition to that, some data says that these students miss about a month of school out of the entire year. Also, it's just difficult for them to travel to school. So you think many students might get to school late. Well, in this situation, when you have 1 hour and 30-minute commute, it's just really difficult to get to school on time. In addition to that, student test scores, state test scores are said to be for English and math about 20 points lower than other students, and also graduation rates shockingly lower, about 20 percentage points lower than other students outside of this pool.
It is so sad on so many levels, and I think it'll take a lot of people by surprise that the trend line suggests that it's getting worse, not better in terms of the total number of students who are having to deal with this. Is the city, are education officials in the city doing anything to try to address the problem or change the trend? program?
So the mayor of New York City has really been trying to come up with an initiative to make sure that there are more of these shelters. And by doing that, that kind of will ensure that a student may be able to be placed in a shelter that's closer to their school. Also, they're trying to make sure that there are liaisons at the school that know what's going on with these students, because of course there might be a teacher that has no idea that they have a homeless student in their classroom. In fact, when I was talking to Victor Aponte, he told me that he was like, basically many of these teachers have no idea, but when there's a support system in place that can help students deal with some of these chronic issues.
It is a remarkable challenge for a lot of students just to get through school, and then to have the added burden of not being sure whether you're going to have a home or where your next home is going to be. It's so heartbreaking. Marques White, terrific story. Marques, thanks for bringing it to us. Appreciate it.